Good Monday morning and welcome to Kramer's Corner with this daily edition of the technical updates. This video, which is for educational purposes only, there's no advice whatsoever intended doing this. But on this Monday, the 20th of January, that is a big day, especially in the US, but also for many around the world with the inauguration of the new president in the US, and that's going to be interesting tonight. We'll start with Amazon today, that has formed this corrective pattern here, a flag-like pattern. It's actually almost similar to the Nasdaq 100 index, so the correlation seems to be quite big there, but it's also a big constituent in the Nasdaq 100 index. What is interesting here on the RSI, it has actually broken its upper falling trend line there, so that is an indication of Amazon to break higher. And if it does break above it, it just spiked a little bit above here Friday. I think it will break higher, and I also think it will take out that little peak there. And if it does, well, then we are back in a bullish trend, and it will most likely be supported by a daily close on the RSI above 60 threshold. Weekly, a little bit struggling there. You can see divergence on the RSI, but if it breaks higher here on the daily, I think we will see new highs on Amazon. And moving on to S&P 500, we're going to see it had quite a good day Friday, 1% higher, back above the clouds. RSI is still lagging a little bit, but if it does break above 60 threshold, which I believe it will, and we probably also will have the S&P 500 closing above 6,050, then we have confirmed a bullish trend has resumed. And here on the weekly, you can see actually formed the bullish engulfing pattern Friday or last week, engulfing the previous body candle here, the body of the candle here from the previous week. And that is a fairly strong signal that could lead to higher levels. Nasdaq 100, you see here, almost similar to Amazon. You're testing the upper falling trend line. RSI broken above its upper falling trend line in this wedge-like pattern here. If it gets back above 60 threshold, it is already in a positive sentiment. So I mean, there's a good chance it will break higher, and there's no divergence as we can see. So if it does break higher here, and I think it will, and it will be confirmed 21,704. If it does close above that, then we are back in full strong bullish trend. Not a bullish engulfing here Friday, but still fairly strong move, almost engulfing it, and RSI back above 60 threshold, so we are in a positive sentiment also on the weekly there. On the Dow Jones has been lagging quite a bit, but it closed Friday above 43,374. We are now in the cloud area. If we can get RSI back above 60 threshold, well, then I will confirm the bullish trend has resumed. And also very strong move here on the weekly, as we can see. Actually also bullish engulfing there, engulfing the previous 1, 2, 3 days, weeks candles. It's a very strong bullish move, and if RSI gets back above 60 threshold, well, then expect a bullish trend to resume. EuroStoxx 50 and European markets in general has been very strong lately, especially last week. New all-time highs here on EuroStoxx 50, and you can see it here on the weekly, how it broken the upper falling trend line there in this triangle-like pattern. It's not really a good example, but it's still a triangle-like pattern. RSI on the weekly back above 60 threshold, and on daily it has been above for quite some time, but now it's pushed higher. There's no divergence on the daily. There is on the weekly, but for now expect higher levels above 5,250. I think it will push higher than that, and there is potential much higher for EuroStoxx 50. Expect some setbacks, of course, and we could suddenly see a top reversal pattern that could change the picture, but for now it is quite bullish. A little bit higher here pre-market, pushing a little bit higher here pre-market, as we can see, but not much. So let's see. DAX also new all-time highs. You can see a very strong bullish trend here in Q4, Q3, Q4, and now also here in Q1. Breaking above its upper falling trend line here on the weekly RSI, which is a strong signal and I think we will see it pushing higher in the coming weeks. No divergence on the positive sentiment on the RSI, so there is a strong bullish trend on DAX, and 21,000 to break that, it seems to be a formality we're very close to, and I think we'll push higher. And here pre-market we are unchanged. Even the CAC 40, just to mention, I haven't mentioned for quite some time, has broken higher, as we spoke about several weeks ago, before I took it off my list, above 7,500, above the 200 moving average, and now testing the resistance here at 77.25. I think it will push higher towards the peak here at 7,800. So even CAC has been very strong of late. Euro dollar is maybe having another go at the upper falling trend line here and the 103.50 resistance. If it does break both, well, then we are looking at 104.55, 60 level here. Excuse me. That could, I think that will be it, because there's a very strong resistance. We have the 55 moving average coming down, so kind of putting a lid on there. We are still in a bearish trend on the weekly. There's no divergence on the RSI, indicating likely lower levels, but it needs to take out the 101.75 first to do that. And we have this bottom reversal pattern in place here. We talked about that several times last week. So I think we'll see a correction up to at least around 104.60. The cable sterling dollar trying to bounce also, but really struggling there, and we are in a strong bearish trend on daily and weekly. No divergence. There's a little bit here on the daily, indicating maybe a little bit of a correction, but it also comes down to what will euro sterling do, which we're going to look at in a second. If it takes out a 121 once again, then there's potential down to 120 and 118.5. And here we have euro sterling that has been rejected at the resistance there at 84.65 area, around 84.60, 60 level. If it does break above, well, then we have a situation where it has potential higher towards 85.5 in this region here, possibly also higher. We are in a bullish trend. There's no divergence indicating likely that it is to break higher, but it could wait and maybe gathering some strength down here, maybe dipping back to 84 before next move higher. I think it will do that. On the weekly, we see it's just the RSI still below 60 threshold. It needs to close above that for really upside potential. Dollar yen bounced from the 38.2 retracement at 154.97. I think I removed this one because now it's just a distraction. Just above the 55 moving average, still positive sentiment on the RSI. If it takes out the lows from Friday at 154.95, I will also, I know it's 97, but subtract a little bit just to make sure. So 95, then I think we'll see it as selling off down to around the 61.8 retracement and 200 moving average here about 152.5 level. If it does bounce crawling higher and takes out 158.88, well, then we are looking at 162. Euro yen, excuse me. Euro yen bounced from the support and around the just above the 61.8 retracement support on 159.80. Cannot hold. We are below all moving averages. We are in a bear trend, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. But key will be can it really stay above 159.80, and can it keep staying above the cloud area? So keep an eye on that. If it starts crawling back above the cloud here and above 162.5, well, then we could see it being caught range bound here. Still strong resistance at 165. Aussie yen in a bear trend, bouncing a little bit here now, but we are in a bearish trend. Lower lows, lower high, lower low. Support at 95.5 area. Sterling yen also in a bearish trend, but bouncing from support here at 189.55. And if we get a bullish day today, we could see a further bounce up to around up to around what? We can add the Fibonacci and say, well, maybe up to here. At least the 193, maybe up to 195. And if we're measuring just from the pure leg down here, well, then we're maybe looking at in this region around here, just below 195. If it takes out the low here at 189.33 or 109.30, well, then expect 188 to be tested. Aussie dollar, let's just resize a little bit here. Aussie dollar is trying now once again to crawl above the upper falling trend line. I think it will succeed, and I think we'll see a push up to at least a 63, maybe up to 63, 45, 50 area, where we have the 38.2 retracement, and then we have the 55 moving average coming down, giving kind of putting a lid on it. So some strong resistance up there. If it's failing once again to close above the upper falling trend line, the downtrend could resume. Dollar Canada has taken out its previous peak here, so I will remove this one, and now there's potential higher to where. Let's have a look at the weekly and zoom out. We can see back here in this region around 146, 147. So very strong move there, or signal for dollar Canada. Sterling Canada. Well, Sterling Canada bouncing. We talked about it last week that it could bounce, and now it seems it's got its mojo back together, at least up to, and we are very close to it now, the 200 moving average at 176.72, which is a 38.2 retracement. That is the minimum it will. If it can really get back above, maybe even up to the 61.8 retracement at 178. But let's see, if it's being rejected here, it could resume downtrend. EURSWISS, well, still forming this ascending triangle-like pattern, resistance around 94.5 that it needs to break. I think it could be tested. We are above the cloud. We are above all moving averages except from the 200. We are in a positive sentiment on the RSI, so I think it will crawl higher there. But let's see. Dollar Swiss still in a correction phase, dancing sideways out of this rising trend line here, but it's also a steep one. It's not that strong, so let's see. We're still in correction phase. There's still risk down to around 90.20 level. RSI, however, there is divergence. As you can see, it's declining here, so we are in exhaust mode. But if it can take out a 92 level, well, then there's potential higher again and uptrend to resume. So be cautious there. We are still could see a correction. The dollar index looks almost similar to dollar Swiss. 108.25 is the key support and still above the rising trend line. The RSI is indicating trend exhaustion, so maybe we'll get a little bit larger correction. If it takes out 108.25, well, then we could see it down to around 107.16 support area. Gold is struggling a little bit to break above the 27.26. Now I have adjusted a little bit to the peak here, 27.26.5. I'm rounding it off. But as we can see here on the daily, and I could have drawn it on the weekly too, it has formed this symmetrical triangle we talked about for quite some time. And if we measure from the bottom of that to the top, and then project it higher, well, then there's potential up to 2930 level. However, I think I would prefer for further confirmation to have it closing about 27.26 or 27.27, but I think it will be on a positive sentiment on the RSI, and no divergence indicating likely higher levels, and the same here on the weekly, no divergence. I mean, it is indicating higher levels, so I think we will see it pushing higher here in the coming weeks towards 2800 and maybe higher. If it suddenly slides back into this triangle-like pattern here, then I will go back into neutral and see what the development will turn out to be. Silver is struggling a little bit, still forming this rising channel-like pattern, but it's struggling. We haven't had RSI back above 60 threshold to confirm the bullish scenario. So I will wait a little bit for that. It's still a little bit weak, and it's still below the 100 and the 55 moving average, which are declining. The 55 moving averages. Copper also took, they were profit taking in Friday. Maybe speculators didn't want to keep copper over the inauguration that is later today, so they're taking on some of the profits because we had a very strong move from around 40 It's from around 400 up to 450. So that's actually a 10% move in a couple of weeks. A very strong move. So a little bit of correction could correct a little bit lower, but positive sentiment on the RSI is still there, and there's no divergence. And if we're looking at the weekly, which I think we should sometimes have a look at the weekly, so RSI is still in a positive sentiment. There's no divergence, indicating we could see higher highs sometime this year. Going when, it's hard to say, but then we'll take out the previous peak there at 520. But we need a close above 450 to actually establish a pure and say the bullish trend has resumed, and RSI back above 60 threshold will actually confirm that. Moving on to crude oil, energy and crude oil, we can see how it was a little bit weak towards the end of the last week, and that meant that the WTI closed below 81.59 key resistance, and also below the upper falling trend line, and RSI failed to close above 60 threshold. So we didn't turn the or reverse the downtrend on the weekly chart. At least we didn't build a new bullish trend. So let's see here the coming days what will happen. If it can take out the previous peak there from last week at 82.63, well, then maybe it could push higher. Sorry, this was Brent crude oil. A little bit of mistake there. I was a little bit confused. I didn't. The levels were a little bit different. Then I say, hang on a minute. But here we have the WTI. Sorry about that. WTI that pushed higher, but also WTI closed below 78.46. Spiked to the 200 weekly moving average, but RSI also closed below 60 threshold, and we closed below here. We are above the falling trend line, but a stronger signal would be that it can close a week above 78.46 and RSI above the 60 threshold. However, on the daily, you can see there's positive sentiment. There's no divergence on the RSI. We're in a bullish trend, so maybe we'll have another go here on WTI. On the gas front, excuse me, on gas, well, Dutch nat gas or TTF nat gas, well, it's a little bit of a limbo here after being rejected here just below 49, and the 61.8 retracement around 48. But we are still above the cloud. We are in positive sentiment. There's no divergence, indicating we could resume uptrend, and there's still potential up to 55, 56, maybe even 57 level. Henry Hub gas, well, it did close above $4, but then, since then we have seen weakness at the end of last week, and now we are also a little bit. So maybe, I mean, I know there's a cold front coming down on North America, and it's actually there at the moment. So very cold in northern part of US and also Canada, and but it hasn't reflected that much in the nat gas. It hasn't fallen through on above the $4. However, we are in a bullish trend, but as you can see, there's divergence here on the RSI. So maybe we will see a further setback on the Henry Hub nat gas. US 10-year Treasury yields has corrected to the 786 retracement at 457. A little bit lower than that, but around that 457, and could be bouncing. There's positive sentiment. There's no divergence, indicating we are likely to see the US 10-year yields pushing higher in the coming weeks. And here on the weekly, you can see, well, we are in a bullish trend also on the weekly. No divergence on the RSI. Positive sentiment. I still think we will reach 5% in a few weeks. The 2 year still above its rising trend line there, but key support is 415, and I think we will bounce here also in the coming days, and there's potential up to 450 level. European yields, and here we have the Euro 10-year yield is below the 38.2 retracement, so 251. Yes, and there is a potential it could correct down to 244, which is the 61.8 retracement. I'm not quite sure we will get there. very strong positive sentiment on the RSI, no divergence, indicating likely higher levels towards 270 and maybe higher. But for now, a little bit of a setback, and it could push lower to this area here. But you can see what is also interesting. That's you should also check out what have you seen previous peaks. The previous peak was here at the 250, and that's more or less where we are at the moment. So it could turn around. They are actually stronger than these Fibonacci levels. They are merely guidelines to me. The UK 10-year, well, seems to be bouncing just above the 786 retracement at 460, 461. And I think it will also bounce after this correction, and it will push higher. Bitcoin cancelled its shoulder-like pattern. We had the shoulder over here, maybe two shoulders, but we had a head and we had a little shoulder there, and we also had a shoulder. But and we see that sometimes. But it took out this shoulder here, and now we have resumed bullish trend. We did that already a couple of days ago before the weekend, pushing higher, and we actually spiked to new all-time highs, and I think it will push higher here in the coming days and weeks. And as long as you stay above 90,000, yes, then we are to push higher. Ethereum lacking a little bit, to be honest, still below the 55 moving average. Can't really get momentum. Can it get back above 3,600? Then I think we will see it resuming uptrend, and it will be confirmed if it's pushed above 3,746. But it's still in a bearish trend, I would say. So it is lacking, but maybe it will catch up if Bitcoin really can push much higher. All right, that's all for today. Have a nice day, and talk to you again tomorrow.